I am writing these lines from a shabby Motel 6 room located off Interstate 5, at least 200 miles away from that place. My hands are still trembling uncontrollably every time I touch the keyboard, and I swear I can still hear the echo of that metallic clanging in my head. If you are intending to buy old religious structures to renovate into homes, a trend that kids on TikTok are crazy about recently, then please read this story first. My name is Elias, a 28-year-old freelance architect. On this past March 12th, I made the biggest mistake of my life when I signed the ownership papers for St. Jude Church, an abandoned Gothic Revival architectural structure lying deep in the dense pine forests of Oregon, about 15 miles of trail from Highway 22. As an architect, I fell in love with it at first sight. The sharp, pointed arches stabbing straight up into the gray sky, the stained glass windows still intact despite being covered in the dust of time, and especially the price, $65,000. A dirt cheap price, absurdly cheap for a monolithic stone structure over 300 square meters wide. The real estate agent, Mrs. Higgins, a woman in her 60 seconds with eyes always darting around anxiously, refused to step past the vestibule area. "Here are the keys. Elias." She spoke quickly, shoving the bunch of ice-cold iron keys into my hand. "Electricity and water have been reconnected, but I advise you, do not stay here after sunset for the first few days. Get used to its energy first." I just smirked. I am a man of science, of structure, and the golden ratio. I do not believe in ghosts or bad energy. I believe in reinforced concrete. The first day moving in was a chaos of cardboard boxes and dust. I chose the area that used to be the priest's changing room behind the altar as a temporary bedroom, because it was small and easier to heat than that vast, cold main hall. That night, the atmosphere in the church changed completely. When the last sunlight faded through the crimson stained glass windows, darkness seemed not just to fall, but to rise from beneath the floor. The space was so silent that I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. The smell of rotting wood and old candle wax, a smell I found nostalgic during the day, now became overpowering, harsh, like the smell of a funeral kept too long. I tossed and turned for a long time before finally falling asleep around midnight, and then I jolted awake. The phone clock on the nightstand lit up with the green number, 3 a.m. Bong. The sound rang out, deep and heavy, shaking my entire oak bed frame. That was not an electronic bell, nor was it an hallucination. I could feel its vibration transmitting through the stone floor, running up my spine. It was the sound of metal striking metal, the sound of a giant bronze bell swinging in the bell tower. Bong. The second sound. I sat up, heart pounding against my chest. Why is the bell ringing? Wind? The air is still tonight. Or is there an intruder? I started counting subconsciously, like a defense mechanism to stay calm. Bong. 5. Bong. 6. The bell sound was regular to the point of being mechanical. Each beat exactly 2 seconds apart. It did not resonate elegantly like the Sunday Mass bell. It sounded crude, rusty, and angry. I sat motionless in the darkness, counting every single beat until my throat went dry. 98, 99, 100. Silence. Exactly 100 tolls. No more, no less. The silence descended immediately, 1,000 times heavier than before. I stared blankly at the dark ceiling, trying to find a logical explanation. Could it be an old broken timer? Or the town kids teasing the newcomer? At that time, I did not know fear yet. I only felt annoyed. I did not know that number 100 was the beginning of a death sentence. The next morning, morning sunlight pierced through the stained glass windows, scattering dancing streaks of blue and red light on the marble floor, making last night's fear seem ridiculous. I laughed at myself in the mirror while brushing my teeth. "You are an architect, Elias," I muttered. That was the sound of water pipes, or metal expanding and contracting due to temperature changes. Don't act like a child. But to be sure, I decided to climb up the bell tower. The way up the tower lay behind a small, low oak door in the corner of the choir loft. The iron spiral staircase was so narrow that my shoulders grazed the cold stone walls on both sides. The smell of bat guano and accumulated dust of decades rushed up the nose, dry and unpleasant. I had to turn on my phone flashlight because the darkness here was thick, swallowing the faint light slipping through the wall cracks. Reaching the top of the tower, the wind blasted into my face through the unglazed arched openings. And there, Hanging suspended in the center was it, the giant bell. It was much larger than I imagined. The bronze surface had turned into a patchy, moss-green patina of time. I approached, reaching out to touch the ice-cold metal surface. And then, the blood in my body froze. I bent down to look inside the bell. Empty. No clapper. The pendulum-shaped metal piece used to strike the bell wall to create sound had been completely removed. That wasn't all. When I shone the light closer on the suspension bolt above, I saw crude, rusty red welds. This bell had been welded shut to the support frame for a long time. It cannot swing. It cannot vibrate. Physically, it is a dead block of metal. What the hell? I whispered, my voice immediately carried away by the wind. If it has no clapper and is welded shut, where did the sound last night come from? I heard the sound of metal striking clearly. I felt its vibration. I spent the whole afternoon checking the plumbing system, searching for any hidden speakers that the previous owner might have left, or even climbing onto the roof to check if any tree branches were hitting it. There was nothing. Street Jude Church was a lonely and silent fortress. Night fell. The feeling of unease returned, creeping in like fog. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the bed, eyes glued to the phone clock, hand gripping a baseball bat tightly. The most ridiculous weapon to fight against what I was facing. 2:58 a.m. 2:59 a.m. 3 a.m. Bong. I almost dropped the bat. That sound rang out again, loud and clear, as if I were standing right next to that hollow bell. This time, I didn't panic. I listened. I focused on the sound quality. It sounded wetter than last night, like the sound of metal striking. Underwater. I started counting. Bong. Bong. It was still regular, ruthless, but when I counted to 90, I felt the temperature in the room drop suddenly. My breath turned into white smoke. 97. 98. 99. I held my breath, waiting for the 100th sound. Silence. An absolute silence. There was no 100th sound. I waited another minute, then 5 minutes. Nothing. Last night was 100. Tonight is 99. A chill ran down my spine. Not because of the cold, but because of the horrifying realization that just hit. It was not just random noise. It is counting down. And I have a bad feeling that I am the target of this subtraction. I should have left right then. Anyone sane would have done so. But people often have a strange arrogance when standing before large investments. I poured all my savings into this place. It's just sound, I reassured myself, trying to cling to the few remaining fragments of logic. Sound cannot hurt me. That was a fatal mistake. The next 3 nights were a slow sequence of psychological torture. Third night, 98 tolls. Fourth night, 97 tolls. Fifth night, 96 tolls. The pattern is undeniable. Every night, at exactly 3 a.m., it knocks off 1 beat. But even more terrifying than the bell was the change in the house while the bell rang. On the night the number went down to 96, I didn't dare sleep in the back room anymore. I brought my sleeping bag out to the middle of the nave, turning on all the construction floodlights I had. I wanted light. I wanted to see every corner. When the first bell rang, bong, darkness seemed to swallow the light of the high-power halogen floodlights. The light didn't go out, but it became weak, murky, as if covered by a thick layer of fog. The air in the nave became thick. Have you ever tried running underwater? That is exactly the sensation when I tried to lift my hand to grab the water bottle. Heavy. The scent of century-old incense suddenly vanished, replaced by a nauseating metallic stench. The smell of rusty iron. Or more precisely, the smell of dried blood. I shone the flashlight towards the old plaster statue of St. Jude, standing in the left corner of the sanctuary. During the day, the statue looks towards the main door, holding a staff. Face austere, but gentle. But under my trembling flashlight beam at 3:05 a.m., the statue's head had turned to a different direction. It was looking straight at me. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I was hallucinating due to lack of sleep. But no, those soulless plaster eyes bored deep into my soul. And more terribly, from the corner of the statue's eye, a stream of pitch-black liquid was oozing out, running down the pale cheek. I held my breath, not daring to move until the 96th bell toll ceased completely. As soon as silence returned, the air thinned out. The lights returned to normal. I gathered all my courage and rushed to the statue. I swiped my finger on the black streak on its cheek. It was wet. I brought it to my nose to smell. The smell of foul young mud mixed with sewer water. The next morning, I woke up with strange bruises around my ankles. They looked like a child's handprints. I needed to get out of the house. The suffocation of street Jude was choking me. I drove down to the nearest town, a small, sparse cluster of population located along the Santiam River, to buy more electrical wire and, honestly, to find some human presence. I stopped at the only grocery store cum gas station in the area. As I walked in, the door chime rang cheerfully, but the atmosphere inside immediately dropped. 3 men drinking coffee at the counter stopped talking. They stared at me, the stranger with dark circles under his eyes, and clothes reeking of the moldy smell of the old church. I tried to ignore it, picked up a few loaves of bread and went to the checkout counter. An old woman with high-bunned white hair was standing there, hands trembling as she scanned the barcode. "You are the one who just moved in," she didn't ask, but stated. Her voice was hoarse, like the sound of crushed dry leaves. "Yes, I bought the old church on the hill." I forced a smile. The old woman's hand froze. She looked up at me. Her eyes were cloudy from cataracts, but the gaze was sharp. "Have you heard it yet?" she whispered, leaning over the counter. I swallowed. "Heard? What?" "Don't pretend," she hissed, her gaunt hand tightly gripping my wrist. Her fingernails dug deep into the flesh, hurting. The counting. "What number is it at?" 96, I blurted out before I could think. The whole shop seemed to hold its breath. The men in the back stood up, leaving the shop without saying a word, as if I were a plague to be avoided. The old woman pulled me closer, the smell of cheap tobacco blowing into my face. "Listen, boy, that is not a church. It has never been a church. They built that shell to suppress the thing underneath." She looked around nervously, then continued whispering, voice trembling with fear. "The last priest there, he didn't die of old age. He died because he let it count down to 0. He thought he could exorcise it. He was wrong." "What will happen at number 0? I asked, a cold feeling running down my spine. The old woman let go of my hand, stepped back, eyes full of pity. "You wouldn't want to know, but I advise you this. Don't let it skip. If you anger it, it won't count 1 by 1 anymore. It will race." "How do I stop it?" I asked desperately. The old woman shook her head, turned her back, and went into the storeroom. "No one can stop time, son. You can only run. But with the mark on your ankle, I'm afraid it's too late to run." I stood frozen in the grocery store, looking down at my ankle through my jeans. How did she know? The old woman's warning at the grocery store kept echoing in my head like a curse. When I drove back to Street Jude Church, I should have stayed at some motel, but a strange compulsion, like gravity, kept pulling me back. I told myself I needed to pack my things, get the laptop and blueprints, but deep down inside, I knew I came back to verify. I did not sleep. I sat right at the foot of the stairs leading to the bell tower, equipped with a super bright flashlight and a GoPro mounted on a tripod, aimed straight up at the tower top through the gaps in the rotting wooden floor. I wanted to record evidence. If I go mad, at least I want to know why. Tonight, the air was colder than usual. My breath puffed out in thick white smoke clouds, even though the heating system was running at full capacity. 2:59 a.m. I started recording. The red light on the GoPro blinked. 3 a.m. CLing. The sound changed. It was no longer the deep, resonating bong sound. It was sharp, piercing like a sledgehammer striking cold steel. And more terribly, it didn't wait for the rhythmic 2 seconds like usual. CLANG. 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 It was rapid, frenzied, furious. I panicked, dropping the flashlight. I tried to count, but the speed was too fast. 95, 94, 93. No, that's not it. It was not counting sequentially. It was skipping. After a long, piercing burst lasting about 10 seconds, the sound suddenly stopped with a massive boom, shaking the whole tower, lime dust from the ceiling falling down onto my hair. The silence arrived brutally. I tremblingly looked at the stopwatch on my phone. 10 seconds. With that speed, and the number of beats I felt, It didn't stop at 90, nor 80. In my head, a number appeared clearly, as if someone was whispering directly into my brain. 50. It had burned half of my time in just one night. The old woman was right. I angered it. Maybe bringing the camera, trying to capture it, made it go mad. I don't have 3 months left. I only have a few days. Or maybe a few hours. I snatched the GoPro down, my hand shaking so much I almost dropped it. I needed to review the footage immediately. I ran into the living room, the old altar area, plugging the memory card into the laptop. The video file was unusually heavy. I pressed play. On the screen, the image of the bell tower appeared thanks to the camera's night vision mode. 2 hours, 59 minutes, and 50 seconds. Everything was still silent. The moss green bronze bell still lay motionless, welded dead to the iron frame. Then 3 hours. My laptop speaker shrieked. The sound in the video was 10 times louder than reality, distorted and crumbled. But on the screen, the bell did not budge at all. Not a single vibration, not a single physical impact. That sound did not come from the bell. It came from above the bell. I rewound, slowing the video down to 0.25x speed. I glued my eyes to the top corner of the frame, where the black oak rafters intersected under the pointed roof. My heart stopped beating. At the second 3 hours and 5 seconds, when the beating sound was at its climax, I saw it. Something black, blacker than the surrounding darkness, was clinging to the bell tower ceiling. It had no fixed shape, like a pile of soaking wet rags or a cloud of thick black smoke. But it had limbs. 4 long, gaunt limbs like spider legs clinging tightly to the beams. And in the middle of that baggy mess, an upside-down head was dangling down. It was not looking at the bell. It was looking straight down at the camera lens. It was looking at ME. And most terrifying was when I zoomed in close on that face. It had no eyes, no nose. Only a wide, gaping mouth stretching all the way to the ears. And that mouth was opening and closing in exact rhythm with that piercing bell sound. Clang. Clang. It was not striking the bell. It was screaming the bell sound. I slammed the laptop shut, throwing it aside. A wave of nausea hit me. I staggered up, intending to run to the main door. I had to leave here immediately. Leave it all behind. House, money, belongings. Life is more important. I rushed to the heavy oak main door. I turned the doorknob. Frozen stiff. I used both hands, leaning my shoulder in to push. Not budging even a millimeter. The door seemed to have become part of the stone wall. I ran to the side door, the windows. Even tried to break the glass. But those fragile stained glass panes were now hard as steel. The chair I threw at the window bounced back, shattering into pieces. I am trapped. Or rather, I am inside its stomach, and it just closed its mouth. I don't remember how long I had been banging on those doors. My hands were bleeding, knuckles swollen. But those thick oak planks remained unyielding like a cliff face. The phone was useless. No signal, no Wi-Fi. Even the emergency call function only reported meaningless static noises. The most terrible thing was not being trapped, but time. My wristwatch showed 12 noon. Outside it should have been blazing sunny, but through the stained glass windows now turned into unbreakable steel plates, I saw only pitch blackness. Not the blackness of night, but the blackness of emptiness. No stars, no moon, no streetlights. The outside world had disappeared. Street Jude Church was now floating in some void. I huddled in the middle of the nave, where the construction floodlight was the only remaining light source. I didn't dare turn off the light, even for a second. From the choir loft, leading to the bell tower, noises started appearing. Creak. Creak. The sound of claws scratching on the wooden floor. Slow, leisurely. It was in no hurry. I knew the prey couldn't go anywhere. I looked up at the holy statues along both walls. 12 apostles. 12 life-size plaster statues. Right now, under the yellowish light, their shadows stretched long on the floor, dancing distortedly. I rubbed my eyes. The statue of St. Peter. And it had moved. Earlier, it stood at pedestal number 3. Now it is at pedestal number 2, a bit closer to me. I turned to the right. St. Thomas was the same. Every time I blinked, they took a step closer, making no sound, simply appearing in a new position. The emotionless plaster faces seemed to be cracking distorted smiles, mocking my despair. And then, the bell rang again. not waiting until 3 a.m. The rule was completely broken. Clang! It started counting at noon or midnight. I don't know anymore. Clang! Each time the bell rang, the light flickered off, and every time the light came back on, the statues were closer. The circle is closing in. I am no longer counting. It is counting for me. The bell sound was rapid, manic, sounding like a hammer nailing a coffin shut. 30, 29, 28. I retreated into the last circle, right before the main altar, hand tightly gripping the trembling baseball bat, back against the ice-cold stone altar. I screamed, shouting into the void. "What do you want? I'm sorry, let me go." Responding to me was only a giggle echoing from the high dome. Not a human voice. It sounded like wind whistling through a narrow door gap, but with a tone of pleasure. 15, 14, 13. The temperature dropped to sub-zero. My breath froze instantly. The floodlights exploded one by one. Pop, pop, pop. Darkness fell. I turned on the phone flashlight. The last light source. The weak light swept through the darkness, and I saw it. The entity in the video. It was no longer on the ceiling. It was standing right in front of me, less than 2 meters away, lanky and tall, almost touching the lowest ceiling chandeliers. Its body was as if woven from night and black smoke, but its upside-down head was clearly visible. Its wide gaping mouth opened, and the deafening bell sound came from that very pitch-black hole. Clang! I took a step. Clang. 9. I stepped back, slipped, and fell against the altar leg. Clang. The holy statues around collapsed to the floor, shattering into pieces. From within the hollow plaster fragments, thousands of pitch-black beetles crawled out, flooding towards me like a black tide. 5. I closed my eyes tightly, covered my ears. I didn't want to see that face when it touched me. 4. The overpowering stench made me vomit uncontrollably. 3. A cold, wet hand, with unnaturally long fingers, touched the back of my neck. 2. Open your eyes, Elias. A voice rang out in my head. No longer the bell sound. It was a human voice. The voice of myself. 1. I opened my eyes. That upside-down face was pressing against mine, the mouth grinning to the ears. Bong. Number 0. You think number 0 is death? No. Death is a luxury far too expensive compared to what happens after. As soon as the last bell chime faded away, the world did not turn dark. On the contrary, a pale light, the green of a corpse, began to leak from the cracks under the floor. That dark entity with the upside-down head did not attack me. It stepped back, bowing down in a grotesque posture of reverence. It was not the master of this house. It was just a gatekeeper. And its mission, counting down the unlocking time, was completed. The ground beneath my feet shook violently. The marble altar cracked in two, sliding to both sides with a terrifying grinding sound of boulders. A freezing blast of air, colder than anything belonging to this world, sprayed up from the pitch-black hole just revealed under the altar. It was the entrance to the crypt. The crypt that in the architectural drawings I had was marked as filled in, 1920. But it was not filled at all. It was wide open. I lay paralyzed on the floor, unable to move, eyes staring at the pit mouth. From within that deep darkness, sounds began to echo up. Not screams, but singing. A choir of thousands of whispering voices, overlapping each other, ancient language, chirping like insects. Exsurgit Deus. God rises. A giant, pale, slimy hand rose up to grip the edge of the pit. Its thumb alone was as big as my entire body. It had no skin, only a layer of pale white pulsating flesh. The old woman in town was right. They built the church not for worship. They built it like a heavy coffin lid to suppress this thing. And the bell. The 100-beat bell every night was not an obsession. It was a sealing ritual. The clapper removed. The bell welded shut. That was someone's desperate effort to stop the bell from ringing. But my presence, my stupid curiosity awakened it, reactivated the countdown process. The thing below began to rise. I saw an eye, a blazing yellow eye, without a pupil, as big as a round shield, staring at me from the abyss. I screamed, a scream that tore my larynx, and the darkness swallowed me. I woke up on the dew-wet grass outside the church fence. It was morning. Warm rays of sunlight shone on my face. Birds chirped. Everything was so peaceful, it felt fake. The police found me after a passerby reported someone lying unconscious. They said I was exhausted and dehydrated. They said I had hallucinations due to a gas leak in the church's old heating system. They found pry marks on the main door from the inside. They said I had locked myself in and tried to escape in a panic. I didn't argue. I nodded, signed all the papers, sold Street Jude Church in a hurry to a resort investment group for a dirt cheap price after only 2 days. I fled. I moved to another state, changed my phone number, tried to forget everything. 6 months have passed. I thought I had escaped. But lately, I've started to realize one thing. Every time I am in a quiet room, every time I close my eyes to sleep, I hear it again. Not from the outside, but from within my skull. The sound of metal striking was deep and dull, echoing in the bone marrow. It's no longer at Street Jude. When the seal was broken, that thing didn't crawl to the surface. It needed a new host, a new church to reside in, and I was the one who opened the door for it. Last night, I heard the first bell in my head at 3 a.m., and tonight, I just counted the second sound. It's starting again from 100, but this time, it's not counting to open the crypt. It's counting to take me over. If you are reading this, and suddenly hear an unusual ringing in your ears, like a bell echoing from far away, please, don't count. Never count. Because if you count, it will know you are listening.